This is the reality show on Calabash TV.
This is Calabash TV, and we want to welcome to our studios Cecil. Charles, traditionally, Cecil, around this time of the year, you're in a different mode altogether. We talk a few things, Calypso, and there's a lot of activity, hype, and so on going on. How does it feel this year, 2020?
Well, actually, COVID has allowed us not to be in that frame and the setting. I mean, of course, the major thing was the social distancing thing. And as you all know, that tent and everything is centered around that social distancing. Well, socialization and so on. Socialization and so on. That's what the tent is all about. Now, and from the fact that you no longer have that naturally, it cripples you. And I could tell you, based on the feedback that we are getting, the calls and so on, whether it's on Facebook, people are clamoring, people are actually looking forward. What are you all doing and so on? Yes, we know there is COVID and so on, but we miss the tents. We miss the tent. And it's very interesting, the tents. It shows the importance of the tents and so on. And no matter, you know, as I always say, it is through the tents or by way of the tents that you get the cream of the crops going into the different stages of competition and so on. And that in itself has its good vibes, you know, because people come, they want to listen, they want to hear what is happening and so on. You have those, you know, who of course are associated with certain artists and so on, and there's already that competition aspect of it, even at the tent level and so on. So yes, you know, that is missing, and I could tell you, you know, people really wanted to see something happen, but they do understand. But at the same time, there's a dent, because really and truly, I mean, this was supposed to be our 38th year when I talk about TOT and so on. So basically, we're not having a 40th year season.
Is that the first time, as far as you can tell, that a complete season was wiped out?
Yeah, since I've been involved, I know this is the first time, but I think there was an incident one time where the artists boycotted the event, and I think it created some kind of problems because other artists went to perform and so on. But apart from that, this is the only time that has happened, you know. And, you know, we have had difficulties, whether it is financial or whatever the case might have been in times gone by, where, of course, what you would have found is that leading up to the season and so on, there were difficulties, but all those were always ironed out and so on. And in spite of all the difficulties, but yet still the season did take place where the artists, of course, were able to come and express themselves, give the people what they want, because as we all see, Calypso is the voice of the people.
So how does it feel this time around? Because normally Calypsonians and the fans and the public are excited about an election year Calypso show leading up into the election year. This time, it appears that we won't have a Calypso season leading up to an election year. So do Calypsonians like feel shortchanged? They feel like they're missing an opportunity here? There's something, they're being robbed of something?
Yeah, well, in my interaction with a lot of the artists and so on, you get that, because a number of them, I could tell you, the guys were ready. Because usually some of the artists are ready from December, November, some as, I mean, February, January. So some of the guys were actually in studio. Some of the artists were actually in studio, I could tell you that. I mean, I've listened to some of the songs and so on. And of course, with what is happening now, of course, you know, fellas go, they change up and so on. And you know, I think that when I listen to the artists, yes, they miss the season, but at the same time, it has not really dampened their spirit and so on. So, for example, if something was to happen tomorrow, you know, and they say country open up or whatever it is, I could tell you, you'd have more than our share bit of Calypso. But there is Calypso. I mean, the artists have organize themselves with the arrangers and so on. I know some of them have actually gone into studio, music sheets are there and so on. And, well, as we all know, most of the artists are always ready. It's just that some are not ready, but the guys are a bit about it still.
Okay, because I know during an election year, it's always fun going to the tents as the election years and politicians might visit and so on. So there's a whole different vibe, a different electricity in the Calypso in an election year.
Yes, definitely. And if you notice, Wally released two songs, you know, and I mean, the moment Wally released that, I tell you, that went to the moon and back, and it was all over, you know. So it was Wally in fine tune, fine play again, and, you know, just that little snippet of what it is there, because if you listen to the song and so on, it plays on something. But all in all, I mean, that is a song, I mean, you know, it really caught people's attention right away and so on, and it just shows you that people were yearning, they were looking forward to something, and I could tell you that stuff is coming out.
So there's a lot more stuff to come out.
Yeah, there's most of, well, if this program was going to be played tonight, I could have told you that tomorrow you would have got
some new material.
Some new material, yeah.
All right, it's airing on Monday, so we'll certainly get a chance to feature some of this new material.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so guys are writing, they are producing, and they're ready to release.
Yes, I mean, you know, even guys like Face, of course, who was caught up, you know, in the Philippines because of his work overseas and so on. But he has been sending material to the normal persons that he would have been working with and so on. And as I said, you know, a lot of the material was already in train long before COVID came about. It is just that COVID prevented the atmosphere of socialization, you know, with the tents and so on.
And it has disrupted to the ecosystem around the tents. So you have the business opportunities, you have just the interaction among Calypsonians with band members and fans and so on. So all that is lost this year.
All that is lost. And I mean, a lot of people, when you look at the tent followers, a lot of them, that is the only time of year where they meet everybody, you know, their groupings and so on. I mean, you go through all the tents right away, and then you'll see sometimes it's mostly the very same people and so on. And it's the opportune time where it is the only time they might really be coming out or going out at night time and so on. And all of that is lost now, you know, for them. So it's something that all our tent lovers always look forward to. As I said, it is missing. They are complaining, and of course, we rightly understand why they are complaining, because they tell you they miss the Calypso season, they miss the tents. The tents. It shows the importance of the tents. As I always told people, you know, the tent is where it is. Yes, the finals and so on is really the grand affair. But I could tell you there are a lot of people who might go to the tents and so on, and they do not go to the finals. You know, it happens one way or the other. Yeah,
because the experience has been sold at that point as well.
Right.
So we know there'll be a big reunion if things happen in 2021. So that's something to look out for. I'm sure people are already planning for the big reunion, as you say, in the tents and so on. But given now that there's not much happening in terms of a tent, for tent leaders like yourself and Calypsonians who are interested in the development of the art form itself, what kind of discussions are you having? Because most people are saying we need to reflect on where we are and plan for a new normal. So things have to be done probably the right way or a different way. How are Calypsonians, Calypso tent leaders and so on interacting and thinking, engaging the CDF and so on in terms of the future of Calypso?
Well, the thing about it is I would have loved if there was a lot of discussion if we usually talk about stakeholders and so on, but basically all the players involved in it to basically come up with a strategy, come up with something that is workable for everybody, you know. That has not taken place at this point in time. Well, prior to that, the FRC and CDF, they did have a workshop, a seminar with the artists and so on. A lot of us were at it and so on. Ideas were fresh about, but as I said, that was pre-COVID. Now, of course, with COVID coming on and so on, and we see a lot of virtual shows taking place. But it is not the same vibes, you know, that you would experience when you interacting with person within the tent setting and so on. But, you know, the fact is that if it's a situation where we cannot go back to what it is, we have to think of something else. At this point in time, I cannot tell you what really it is, because it's some serious discussion that would have to take place, because, of course, it involves finance, it involves everything, logistics changes and all those kind of things. So it's something we have to give deep thought to. And maybe COVID has presented us with a situation now where we have to rethink a lot of things and so on. Well, as you did realize, for example, TOT, Soca Village, 1 year we did the pay-per-view where we tried to sell the show and so on. So those are things that did not work, or what I say, people did not gravitate to, because they still wanted the vibes in the tent and so on. And I don't know, but honestly, the 10 followers, they would have to be involved in that discussion, I could tell you. They would have to be involved in that discussion.
Yeah, obviously, because it's an experience that you're putting on for them, so they ought to have a key role in there as well. We've seen over the past years, there's been some issues with, you know, just how the management and how Calypso is being administered as a product and so on. There's always a concern about how much is injected in Calypso and how serious it is taken as an art form. But now we see with the government saying, well, they're seeing the numbers where the carnival, and Calypso is a key part of carnival, is driving the numbers. We talk about marketing and tourism, and the Calypso is playing its part in that as well.
Oh, yeah.
How much is that going to be involved in? How much is that going to influence a discussion on where do we go with Calypso as a product, uniquely St. Lucian?
Well, the thing is, and sometimes, you know, I don't know if to say that COVID is a blessing in disguise or whatever it is, but I remember a couple of years ago, I mean, I'm talking about 10 years or even more than that, the research was showing, the surveys were showing that the carnival experience was the most successful in all of the festivals that they had in St. Lucia. All right, but of course, people put that on the back burner and so on. Now it has come back into the fore again. And the creative industry, and usually when we talk about the creative industry, as though we're just looking at one aspect of it, we need to look at this thing in totality. All right, we need to have some serious discourse. But in all of that, I'm not talking about where we're going to have, you know, just come, talk, drink, you know, have a seminar, and at the end of the day, you know, a report, and the report doesn't come back or whatever it is. But if we are very, very serious, we need, you know, to take this thing serious, because from time immemorial, the implemented job, you hear about the value of the artist, you hear of the value of the creative industry, and it is not just Calypso, but the entire thing. And that is an area where I think seriously any government, whichever government is there, they have to give not lip service to it, but they need to put proper structures and put the money behind it. It's all right to say, yes, we set up a Ministry of Creative Industry and so on. But if it is calling for 3 million or 4 million and so on, put that in. You do not give us a 250,000 and so on. Because at the end of the day, I need to say, too, the fact is that people usually say, well, it's 10 managers or just the artists. No, it is not. It is a whole economic base for a lot of persons. So you talk about designers, you talk about musicians, you talk about decorators, you talk about, I mean, just songwriters, just name it, the song system. So a lot of people, a lot of businesses, you know, I mean the media and so on, a lot of businesses are benefiting when there's a Calypso season or when there's carnival. So we have to look at the bigger picture, not just the artists. Yes, the artists, of course, are the major persons, because like I always say, if the Calypso on the night of finals, the 10 artists decide they're not going to sing, you have put all that infrastructure in place and so on. At the end of the day, what? You don't have a show. So we need to focus, and you know, it's nice that, for example, you have a grouping like the Balance, which is the artists representing themselves, coming and working along with the tents and so on, producer and so on. And I think that is a move in the right direction. And maybe with COVID now, we need to take it even further, but have some serious discourse, because I could tell you, year in, year out, we know the fact is you need to put the financing if we are going to be serious about seeing total development of the creative industry in St. Lucia.
Would that discourse also involve discussions on the fraternity reclaiming, because one time Calypso was being run by the Calypso Association, but that's been ceded to CDF and other agencies and so on. Is that likely to be part of the discussion moving forward?
Well, I don't know if I would advocate for an association in terms of that kind of loose thing, but I would like to see it more into a union. Into a union. And I could tell you, Bernard, that the model that Tuco in Trinidad is using is something that we thought of long before Tuco actually put that in place. So where you had the soca artists and the Calypsonians being different, no, they came together. You understand? Because they realized, you know, it is for all of us in it, irrespective of what genre of the Calypso art form that you're dealing with. But at the end of the day, it has benefited. And what we see happening in Trinidad, I mean, when you talk about a union, it's just like you have a union representing workers. So, you know, they are involved in the whole administration of the art form. I mean, actually, Tuco is actually an act, they were actually came into being for an act of parliament, you know. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, yes, we talk about association, but we know what happens when you have that kind of you know, association has been bad in terms of when you hear about association, it gives a bad taste to persons and so on. So I would hope that it would be more something that is more structured, something that has more legal teeth, something that, you know, like I said, Tuco in Trinidad, for example, it is governed by an act of parliament. So they are basically part of government in terms of, but they run everything. They, of course, give all their accounts and so on because they have to give in all the reports and so on. And I really love to see it be something similar like that happening in St. Lucia. Because at the end of the day, you know, we have to think not just of the artists, but everybody involved. I mean, even in terms of the management, because what you notice too is that it is almost like a voluntary thing because persons have their other jobs and so on. But when you have a structure where you have a full-time secretariat, you have full-time employees and so on, of course you're going to get better results. If people don't work based on the job description, you fire them. But when you come and then it's almost like a society kind of thing, you elect this person and that kind of thing, you know, because that person might have belonged to another tent and that kind of thing. So it creates too much, you know, distrust and so on. So whereas, you know, you have full-time employees and so on, that is the better way to go, honestly, Bernard.
One of the areas I suppose so that there will need to be some discussion in terms of funding and financing of Calypso. Currently, you have a budget, but normally you have to work with the budget.
Yeah.
That obviously will be a key critical area as well for you to focus on in terms of the sources of revenue for funding.
Yeah, and then I agree with you because, I mean, of course, there are agencies that would fund and do those things, of course, but you have to put a proper proposal. But what is happening now, for example, I mean, you have the different tents, and everybody is going after that little smallness of thing. So it is too much, and even your major funder, okay, goes for that same pool of resources from those same people and so on. Naturally, where there is more volume, that is where those people would think, but they do not see about where it starts.
But should government agencies be allowed to compete with like a Calypso Association or a tent, for example? If you're going after private sector, should also the government be competing with you for that private sector dollar?
And that is what creates a problem because, and that's where we're coming back to it. You know, the tents are seen because I could tell you there were people who are advocating by ban the tents, you know, there shouldn't be any tents and that kind of thing. So, here what is happening? Nobody is there to put in and say, okay, we're going to have a finals or semi-finals or whatever the case might be. Nobody has come and say, okay, Calypsonians, you have lost your revenue because normally you would have been looking at a 45,000 or whatever it is, prize money and so on. There's not that thing happening now. What can we do? You know? So, and you see, when we fight among ourselves, this is the end results. At the end of it all, when something like this happens, then everybody just finds themselves in a jam, and that is what is happening. But when we need to grow up, you know. You want to come in and impose things. We have been there a long time. Yes, I'm not saying that we have always done things in the way that you all would have wanted, but a lot of the times there's a lot of misconceptions, you know, I could tell you that. A lot of it is misconceptions because sometimes you'd hear the tents get all the monies and all them kind of something, and then when you have to put it to people and think, then they understand, you know, that it is not so. Even sometimes you tell them, okay, well, come and run it. And then when they're like, boy, is that all you were doing and so on? So all in all, you know, we need to have some open discussion. People need to listen, you know, and it is key that they listen. We're not telling them, like, I mean, I've always said, you give us 100 grand. You don't give it to us all one time. If at a certain period and so on, we do not account for it, do not give us more. That it might take, don't give it, make us accountable. I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the funding model, because we see how other things are funded. So, for example, the tourist board or the whatever committee it is, organization, will get an allocation from the budget and so on. Now, we saw recently with the tourism
events,
the act that is being passed in Parliament, that's been held back, withdrawn for the time being, is that there was a funding mechanism being put in place. And we've seen, for example, for road repairs and so on, there's probably some levy on taxes for the airport. So there's dedicated taxes for certain activities of government. Should something like that be considered for at least for the creative industry, where there is a dedicated tax and that money would go towards the development, because Calypso and Carnival now is the key part of marketing St. Lucia.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, and as I said, Bernard, the powers that be, they need to listen. They need to come have discourse with us and so on. And you see, persons just come, they do things and so on, and the stakeholders or the persons who really matter are not involved. It's basically you just get information, but you're not involved in the dialogue to actually make something happen. And all those approaches have to change if you have to be serious. And when I say serious, if we are so concerned about the creative practitioners, you know, our artists, our musicians, our songmen, basically everybody, the designers, if we are truly serious, these are the things. So at the end of the day, it is no guessing thing or persons wondering whether we'll get money this year or whatever the case might be. But as you rightly said, you know, some form of taxation or whatever it is, not in the real sense, but at least something is going back so that the artists and all the practitioners of the creative industry would realize that there is something there for them. Because when there is no music and so on, everything is just dried. Everything is just dried. So it just shows you the importance and the serious contribution that the artists, the musicians, and everybody who's involved in the creative industry contributes to the whole economic development of the country. So yes, I'm serious. It should not be no kind of lip service or passerby kind of thing. Oh, I remember, oh yes, May's Carnival. And then we think about this and so on. And I could tell you, we have presented some serious budgets of what the actual cost is to run Calypso seasons and so on, to actually run a Calypso tent. And I could tell you there were people, when we were telling them whatever it is, when they came into it, then they realized that, boy, that was what you all were dealing with all the time. How did you all manage it and so on? But if we have to be serious and if we have to get through in a real economic and develop properly in this kind of short thing, this year you're okay, next year you're not okay, it cannot work. And it doesn't make the artists themselves feel, you know, comfortable, because, you know, I'm not sure, must I release and so on. People complain that the artists are always late and so on. That is not always true. That is not always true. When you're in a situation where you have invested for a season $10,000 or whatever the case, and I could tell you some of the artists invest heavily, and at the end of the day, you cannot even get, I mean, just like the what do you call it, the carnival bands, they would tell you, we invest so much in a costume, a king and queen band, and then at the end of the day, the price money is way below. Why must I go into it? You understand? Some persons, you know, have the means of doing it. Some persons don't have the means. But the majority of people will always be left behind.
Yes, and so the country suffers if everybody can give the best work
That's right.
and feel comfortably producing it as well. And obviously, then it calls for an investment, a serious investment. It's not just a favor. It's an investment that has to be made in something that's being used to market the country. So I think that has to be one of the conversations that the stakeholders need to have.
Yeah, definitely. And, we, you know, as I said, it's not a matter of conversation now and a report coming in and the next 10 years again, we still on the same thing. You know, no. I mean, Pele has been gone a long time. Godfrey is gone. And those guys advocated for a number of things and so on. It did not happen in a lifetime. I am almost way out now. At least I want to see something, you know, tangible happens, something meaningful happens, you know, that the artist could say, yes, I have earned, you know. I mean, we have had workshops with our artists and so on in terms of financing and so on, because what I always try to do, for example, if a financial institution sponsors our tent, I mean, I'm just talking about TOT Soccer Village, what we do, we'll bring in those financial persons to show our artists and so on how to invest and so on, the new way to do business and so on. And sometimes we open it up to not only our 10 members, but other members of the fraternity. You know, so we are concerned, and we want at the end of the day that a lot of the artists don't have to be walking with a piece of paper, or when they're dead, we have to be hustling to bury them and that kind of thing. The artists deserve more than that.
So I suppose, like you suggested, the union would address some of those,
Yes,
some of those
definitely.
issues as well.
Right. So that's why I'm saying we need to move away from this association thing. Get it legally set up and so on, whether it is for an act of parliament or whatever the case might be. The state is involved. You prepare your accounts and so on. Government invests so much in it. Accounts is given. You allow us to run the season and so on, as it is done in most territories and so on. But at the end of the day, you make the fraternity accountable for those funds and so on. And not no loose thing and so on.
Yeah. The development of Calypso has been basically, I know your tent has been organizing workshops, and there's been 1 or 2 workshops, judging and songwriting and so on leading up. But do you foresee a more structured development program for Calypso development, which includes school Calypso songwriting, even at schools of music and those government schools, well, schools around the country where that can be part of a kid's development, somebody who's interested in songwriting, that there's a structured development program for them.
Yeah, and you see, and that is why I said, if we don't have song policies and so on, you'll always find, because I remember this guy, he was an education officer, Mr. Alcide. I mean, he's in Canada now and so on. Miss Fortuna Anthony had one when she was chief education officer and so on. There were a lot of those things that were being proposed at that time. I mean, it was written about and so on. But then there again, you know, it is a thing where individuals come and then they change the thing. And at the end of the day, who suffers? Everybody suffers. So even in terms of, you know, the songwriting in the schools and so on, there was a paper that was actually presented, and it was I think at that year I coordinated schools Calypso, and we did a couple of things and so on, and these were the things that we were trying to encourage. Not that we are saying that, you know, the Harpies and the Charties and them, you have to work along with them too. They themselves could be the facilitators and so on, the Sukus and so on, but they will not always be there. We need to begin to get a new cadre of writers and so on, you know, because they themselves are burnt out. Because you have to write for everybody and that kind of thing. In that way, there's no development. But if we have things that are structured, I mean, the School of Music, I mean, I've spoken to Mr. Payne a number of times and so on, you know, in terms of what can we do in terms of a Calypso program at School of Music and so on. But there again, every agency is struggling with the finances and so on to do proper things. But if everybody, all the unions come together, then we know the overall cost of doing this, because there's this development aspect. It costs so much. The execution aspect, it costs so much. Implementation, things could be done, but when we work in different silos and so on, nobody knows what is happening and so on, we don't come together, we find ourselves just more confused. You know?
Well, every sector has development, product development aspect to it. So I guess if the creative industries and Calypso and Carnival is considered an industry, a serious industry, there ought to be product development, as we have in every other aspect.
Exactly.
And standards and everything else has to be a part of that as well.
Well, you see, and stop, let us looking at the end result, which is what we just think of a show. There's much more to it than that. It's not just a show. Before that show could take place, there are a lot of things that have to be done properly if you're going to be excellent at those shows, you know. And then sometimes people say, well, boy, this year Carnival was this or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, what led to that? And these are some of the areas we're not looking at. What led to that? Was there proper preparation? Why was there not proper preparation and so on? Was there no financing? Why was there and so on? These are the key things, you know. I mean, an artist, like I said, if you don't make it into the finals, you have basically lost. You have invested so much on your own. And then you come out of the season owing the bank or whatever the case. And I could tell you there are some artists who actually take loans.
Wow.
Yeah, some artists actually take loans, you know, and do not tell me, well, the artist should be preparing by investing and so on, you know, or saving and so on. How many of us could save? Come on, you know. People have to be real. People have to understand, you know, that it is not that the artists are not interested or persons are not interested, but at the end of the day, it has to be beneficial to everybody. We make you happy, you're supposed to make the artist who makes you happy, happy too.
One of the good things COVID has done is to give us time for us to discuss those things over the next few months as we build into the 2021 season, at least because people keep talking about this new normal, we need to do things differently, see things differently. I suppose if we miss this opportunity, then we miss out for life. So I suppose there's a lot on your plate right now.
But a lot of those things are not new, you know. A lot of those things are not new. I mean, not to divert a bit, but yeah, everybody telling you because of COVID, we must begin to develop backyard gardens. I'm sure as soon as COVID is over, half of the people it done. And maybe I'm not wishing for that to happen, but these are the kind of things that we have to guard against in terms of, let's do it now, let's do it, and so on and so on. And when the time comes to do it, we find ourselves in the same trap. Because like I tell you, a lot of those ideas are not new. COVID has maybe reinforced that it has to be done and so on. But post-COVID, I only hope we could still remain in that same mindset to realize that COVID has given us an opportunity to do the things that we have always wanted to do, the things we have always suggested and so on. But at the end of the day, the artists, everybody is investing, but it needs to be more than that.
Certainly. So it's a conversation we'll have, continue to have over the next few months as we come out, well, I don't know if we're coming out or we go deeper into the COVID experience, the COVID existence, but certainly a discussion. And it's quite timely as well because there's an election around the corner, so it's a good time to influence policy of whoever wants to govern St. Lucia to at least to pay some additional attention. I know you're right. These issues have been around for a long time, but it's a good time for us to start to incorporate it into policy and the manifesto, so people can see what the plan is and what is being delivered and so on.
Oh yes, particularly with the young persons, because then they always look at what this guy has been in this thing for so long and so on. Has it benefited? Do I want to follow that and so on? As I said, we don't always blame the artists because there might be some, when somebody have to be juggling, that kind of thing and so on. It is not, and I could tell you a lot of them, some might not listen, but some do listen and so on, in terms of, investing in certain things and so on, in terms of equipment and that kind of thing. So, but then it's just the whole thing that it has not moved after a season, what happens to the artists and so on. So we have to be thinking of those kind of things, we have to move further than that, I'm not jealous of any other entity, but, when certain other competitions could give you a piece of land and a house and that kind of thing, the Calypso season, the Monarch, what does he get? Everybody else who is a winner is invited to opening or something or whatever the case might be. Our Monarchs, what happened to them? They always left behind until the next following year, So, or sometimes I think maybe they might say, but the Calypso is still Malawi thing, so we cannot have an Ashanti putting a crown on a whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah. Maybe we're too much in the class thing now. I mean, we need to come back to basics, and understand what the Calypso is all about and so on. And here again, COVID just shows and it proves, that people have missed a very, very important element in our culture, in the economic life of this country, which is the Calypso. So the Calypso is important. It will always remain important as long as there are people. The practitioners will go and come, some of us will die and so on, but the Calypso as an art form will remain once there are people. Good.
Cecil, we appreciate the time that you're giving us. We know there's so much more we need to discuss, but time is an issue. But we certainly will have continued conversations with you because like you said, there's new material being released, so there's always new things happening as the virtual season develops in St. Lucia. We'd like to wish you all the best and look forward to engaging you again.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard, and I only hope you are able to come on board when we begin that serious discussion, so maybe they will not only see us, but they'll see different faces in that conversation.
Yes, we appreciate it. So thank you, Cecil, and good luck. And we look forward to the Calypsos that you say will be coming out pretty soon.
Oh, yes.
All right. So this is Calabash TV. We appreciate the time that Cecil has given us, and we look forward to engaging him and other members of the fraternity over the next few weeks as we continue our conversation on the development of the creative industry and its role in national development. Thank you for viewing.
This is The Reality Show.